Your opponent activates Mystic Mine, but you've got Borreload Savage Dragon. Can you stop it? Welcome back to the Legacy Crusaders YouTube channel. My name is Benji. This is the Ask Judgeman series where we try to help you misplay less and win more. And today we are talking about the activation of a card or effect. How are those things the same? How are they different? If you want to know, watch on. Make sure you subscribe and like the video if you enjoy ruling content. You can also check out additional content on this exact topic on a slightly older video we posted referencing Totally Awesome and Breakthrough Skill. If you're not familiar with Borreload Savage Dragon, it is a dark level 8 synchro dragon type monster with 3000 attack and 2500 defense, whose requirements are 1 tuner and 1 non-tuner monster. This card's effect reads as follows. If this card is synchro summoned, you can equip 1 link monster from your graveyard to this card, and if you do, place Borrel counters on this card equal to that link monster's link rating. This card gains attack equal to half the attack of the monster equipped to it by this effect. When your opponent activates a card or effect, as a quick effect, you can remove 1 Borrel counter from this card, negate the activation. You can only use this effect of Borreload Savage Dragon once per turn. So in this scenario, we're up against Mystic Mine, the most broken card in Yu-Gi-Oh! The best card in the game. If you're not playing it, you're doing it wrong. If Mystic Mine resolves and you have no way to stop it, you just lose the game. Start putting spell and trap removal in your deck, and you won't have to deal with this problem. But that doesn't mean this card is unbeatable. The effect of Borreload Savage Dragon can negate the activation of Mystic Mine. But the part that you might have noticed that's interesting about Borreload Savage Dragon is not only does it negate the activation of a card, it does not state what it does to the card afterwards. It doesn't say if the card is destroyed, if the card is banished. It just negates the activation. Almost every other card in the game that negates the activation of a card will either banish that card, return it to the hand, destroy it, or do something to that card. But Borreload Savage Dragon does nothing. So the question is, will the Mystic Mine just sit on the field if you negate it, or will it go to the graveyard? If it does just sit on the field, does its effect still apply? I remember a scenario I had where my opponent had Abyssgale Mizuchi, which is a equipment spell that's played in the Mermail deck which negates the effect of a spell card. And if I just activated a continuous spell, Mizuchi would negate the effect. But the card would stay on the field, and I'd still be able to trigger its other effects later in the turn, unaffected by the effect of Abyssgale Mizuchi. So the answer to this question is, if you negate the activation of Mystic Mine, where does it go? It goes to the graveyard, and that's based on the definition of what it means for a card's activation to be negated. If the card's activation is negated, the card was never placed face up on the field. Even if the card was set first and then flipped face up, it's not considered to have been on the field, and when a card's activation is negated, whether it be the activation of a spell, the activation of a trap, or the summon of a monster, the card goes to the graveyard. This can be derived from what happens when you negate the summon of a monster, even though most cards that negate the summon of monsters does also say what to do with it afterwards, such as Solemn Warning, which says to destroy the card, or Chaos Trap Hole, which says to banish the card. Now, you may have had scenarios where Borreload Savage Dragon did not send the card to the graveyard, and that's because sometimes cards' effects are what are being negated by Borreload Savage Dragon. If a card like Cosmotown was placed face up on the field before Borreload Savage Dragon made it onto the field, Borreload Savage Dragon can still negate the effect of the card. It has 2 effects. One is to show Cosmo monsters in your hand, shuffle them into your deck, and then draw the same number of cards. If you were to negate the activation of that effect, then that effect would just not resolve. But the Cosmotown would not go to the graveyard because its activation was never negated. The card was already placed face up onto the field. Now, there are a couple other questions that arise when you're dealing with Borreload Savage Dragon. One is, what happens if you were to destroy the link monster that's equipped to it? Well, all that would happen is that his attack bonus would go away because he gains half the attack of the equipped monster. So if there's no equipped monster, he loses the attack boost. But a commonly asked or assumed thing would be that his Borrel counters would go away because the Borrel counters are determined by the link monster. That is true, they are determined by the link monster, but those counters are placed onto the card and they just stay there. And the number of counters changes as he uses his negates. So obviously once those have been applied and been removed, they're not going to change because the monster has changed. Although, if you do negate his effect with something like Breakthrough Skill or Infinite Impermanence, he will lose all the counters because the ability to hold counters is a continuous effect that's applied to his card, just like spell counters. If you negate a card's effect that can hold spell counters, all the spell counters are removed. If you want to know more about negating the activation of spells or traps, you can again watch the video on Totally Awesome, and I'll see you guys next time.